All right, we're doing a spontaneous discussion, spontaneous little reading based on Exodus 16. We're discussing Shabbat, whether Shabbat should be on the daytime, whether you should observe the Shabbat during the daytime only and not the evening portion. So we're going to go to Exodus 16. And Ezzy, you want to kind of form a question at all or anything like that before we read?
I mean, my question is Shabbat observed from evening to evening, or is it from morning to the morning of the seventh day to that evening?
Okay. So with that, we'll go to Exodus 16.
We're not going to read the whole thing, right? We're going to stop at the verses that you're looking at, right?
Yes.
I just want to read from the beginning so I know what's going on.
Yeah, we're not going to read the whole thing and then go over it. We'll be, you know, like we usually do. We'll be interactive with the scriptures, but start from verse 1.
And they departed from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their going out of the land of Mitzrayim. And all the congregation of the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, if only we had died by the hand of Yahuwah in the land of Mitzrayim, when we sat by the pots of meat and when we ate bread to satisfaction. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to put all this assembly to death with hunger.
All right, pause.
Can I just ask you a question? I'm sorry. When did your regular day start, though? Are you, like, let me just understand that.
My regular day, like Sunday or whatever?
Yeah, like
any day during the week.
Like for us, so right now we're still in quote-unquote Saturday. This evening we will be in Sunday. When does yours start? Morning. So okay. Morning to evening, and then do you discount the evening to the morning? Like that's not included in the...
So, okay, so the way that my day goes is you have morning, then you have sunrise, then you have sunset, evening, and then night. That's a full day.
All the way to the next morning.
Right, until the next morning, which is the first sign of light.
So it's
not necessarily when you can see the sun rise. So
okay, so I'm just going to simplify sunrise to sunrise, that almost basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay, dokies. So tomorrow morning at 3:00 in the morning, quote unquote morning, would still be your Saturday. Okay. I just had to get it. Okay.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, I am raining bread from the Shemaim for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day in order to try them whether they walk in my Torah or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moshe and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, at evening you shall know that Yahuwah has brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And in the morning you shall see the esteem of Yahuwah, for he hears your grumblings against Yahuwah. And what are we that you grumble against us? And Moshe said, in that Yahuwah gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfaction, for Yahuwah hears your grumblings which you make against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against Yahuwah. And Moshe said to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before Yahuwah, for he has heard your grumblings. And it came to be, as Aaron spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and see, the esteem of Yahuwah appeared in the cloud. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, I have heard the grumblings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, between the evenings you are to eat meat, and in the morning you are to be satisfied with bread, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And it came to be that quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And the layer of dew went up, and see, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground.
Can I share a thought real quick that I'm having so far on this? The first thing I'm seeing is, number one, the whole goal of Yahuwah right now is to tell Israel to rest, right? And not do any work. So the first thing I'm seeing is that Yahuwah is providing food in the evening first, and he's also providing food in the morning. So I just want to let you know that's kind of what I'm observing already. Is I'm already seeing Genesis chapter 1, evening then morning principle as far as resting, which would be part of what the Shabbat is all about. On the seventh day you shall rest. So he's providing meat in the evening, which is the beginning of the nighttime, and he's providing dew, right, in the morning, which will turn into manna. So I just want to say that's just what I observe. I just caught that already.
They don't always have
Okay, so hold up. I have a
So verse 13 would be the highlight for me. In the evening, Quail came up and covered the camp. That's awesome because that means they don't need to get their own quail. They don't need to go hunt down any animals. In the evening, it's being provided for them. And in the morning, dew lay around in the camp. So again, Yahuwah is also providing in the morning. If it would have had the other way around, if it would have said morning, the dew lay around, and then in the evening, quail came, then I'll be like, okay, now I see a pattern here, morning first, then evening. But I'm actually seeing the Genesis 1 pattern.
I didn't see that at first, but okay. It's fresh on my brain. We just read it.
All right. Where were you at? Because I think you're reading faster than I am, actually. I'm like 2 verses behind you.
Oh, sorry.
Where were you at?
Verse 15.
Okay. Yep.
And the children of Israel saw, and they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moshe said to them, "It is the bread which Yahuwah has given you to eat. This is the word which Yahuwah has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, and omer for each being, according to the number of beings. Let every man take for those who are in his tent." And the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more, some less. And they measured it by omers, and he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered according to his need. And Moshe said, "Let no one leave any of it until morning." And they did not listen to Moshe, so some of them
All right, pause real quick. Milo asked to pause.
Okay.
Right.
When I hear these, I'm not thinking it's defining the day or not. It's simply saying events that are going on. That's because that's not the circumstance is not defining a day. They didn't question it, right? Let's think about them. They weren't wondering when does a day start for them. So that would not be in the mindset. Oh, why this is happening at morning versus evening. It's establishing. Well, one, they were complaining. So Yahuwah is about to prove them and showing, I'm the one that provides for you. So for us, we're trying to read it because it has something to do with the day and night, as though that's where their question. Their question wasn't complaining, Yahuwah, when did you start the day? You need to define it to us. I just want to start with that. But nevertheless, so going with this, I do see at the evening they had to quail that time. And each morning, can we all agree that the dew came and this is where the manna was formed from?
Yeah.
And then by the next morning, they couldn't leave that manna that they had until the next morning, right? Because then, okay, so I'm just kind of starting from there. But did you get what I'm talking about? Where it's not defining. That wasn't the.
Yeah, they just hungry.
All I'm saying is that I see where daytime's coming in. I'm just saying that's not the facts.
Just to be in defense of people that are trying to figure this out. Just because the characters in a particular story weren't trying to figure that out doesn't mean that we're not trying to figure it out. So we're gleaning from what's being written. Mm-hmm. So they might not be quarreling over it, but we are.
No, I know.
So we're using what's written here to figure out how a day works.
But that's all I'm saying. It could get slippery because it's... Okay, we'll keep going.
I'll let you, maybe when we go further along, you'll let us know evidence of what you're trying to say. All right, so where are you at, 19?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And Moshe said, "Let no one leave any of it until morning." And they did not listen to Moshe, so some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moshe was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, each one according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omirs for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. And he said to them, this is what Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Shabbat Kodesh to Yahuwah. That which you bake, bake, and that which you cook, cook, and lay up for yourselves all that is left over to keep it until morning. So I just wanted to say something right here. So okay. I guess my question is,
so what's the pattern so far before you get to your question? Can you develop a pattern?
Yes, the pattern so far is in the evening you gather your quails, and then in the morning you gather your bread.
Right.
That's the pattern. But then here, the only thing that's mentioned is bread in verse 22. On the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omirs for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. So why is it, I guess my thing is, if it's supposed to be, well, I think I just answered my own question. If it's supposed to be evening to evening, if it's supposed to start in the evening, were quails not gathered the evening of this 6th day?
That's not a day. That quails wasn't a daily thing. I'm sorry, I never took quails as a daily thing that was happening.
That's what I thought, because I thought they were gathering. Hold on, let me go back. Hold on. So in verse 12, I have heard the grumblings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, between the evenings you are to eat meat, and in the morning you are to be satisfied with bread. And then it talks about the quails coming up in the evening. So are they not gathering the quails every day?
I don't believe that was an everyday occurrence. No, I'm going to try.
I believe it was an everyday occurrence. I actually disagree with my wife on that one. I don't think it was a one-day thing.
Yeah. Because in verse 5, hold on. No, in verse 4, see, I am raining bread from the Shemaim for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, and in order to try them whether they walk in my Torah or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. So I'm thinking that it includes both the bread and the meat, because they were complaining about sitting next to the pots of meat and being satisfied with bread in verse 3 of 16. So that's what's not clear in here about the quails. It does only address it once, but then he says that you're gathering daily, and on the 6th day you gather twice as much.
But what is it twice? Because and that's why I say it's only one time of it. Where's the one where they came out the nostril? Where's my phone?
All right, let me pause this video real quick.
So all
right, we're back in. We're on a side topic. Trying to find out if the quail was just a one-day occurrence versus, a 6-day occurrence. But Ezzy, what do you want to say real quick?
So I guess my question is, in verse 22, when it says it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omirs for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe, this gathering, even though bread is the only thing mentioned here, wouldn't this twice as much also include the quails that came up in the evening?
Let's go with the assumption that the quail was not there every evening. I'm just going to go with that assumption for now, because it doesn't mention that, because it's only mentioning the manna. Why? Because when they tried to leave it overnight on the other days 1 to 5, what happened?
It got worms and it stank, like it says in verse 20.
Exactly.
What got worms and stank?
The manna.
Okay.
So let's play a little day trick. Let's say today's not Shabbat. Let's say today is I'm just going to use the regular days of the week. Let's say today's Thursday. Okay. So, and it's earlier. It's like, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. The dew's out and all this stuff. So you're gathering at that time. By the time the sun came up, there's no more dew. It wax off. Can we all agree with that based on what the scripture was here? So it was gone. So you had to gather your 1 omer per person, and then that lasted you, the entire day till the evening. But by the next morning, you couldn't have any more of that because Yahuwah's going to give you a fresh supply, basically, right?
Right.
Then it will go ahead and be wormy and all that stuff. But on the 6th day, let's go to Shabbat. Let's go to Friday. During the day, 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Now we're on Friday. Shabbat's going to start in the evening till the morning. Then I'm just going with our logic of evening to the day. You had to do twice as much there in the day, because then once it gets wax hot, there's no more. You didn't gather enough that you should have, because he's not going to bring it on Shabbat. Why? Because you shouldn't be gathering it in. You should be resting and all that stuff. So I'm just going to stop with that part with the bread. Are we all in agreement with that portion with the bread? Okay. Now you're saying, your question is, if it was the evening time, they'd be gathering twice as much quail. And then what's the question with the quail? I'm sorry.
Well, I guess my question is, if Shabbat is supposed to begin in the evening of the 6th day, is that why it doesn't mention quail being gathered, even though he says you're supposed to gather twice as much daily in verse 5? On the 6th day, you shall prepare what you bring in, and it shall be twice as much as you gather daily. The only thing that they're gathering daily is the quail in the evening and then the bread in the morning. So my question is, if Shabbat is from evening of the 6th day, if that's when it starts, is that the reason why there's no quail mentioned as being gathered on the 6th day, and that's why they're gathering twice as much bread?
Is your question in essence if they be sinning because they're gathering quail, and it would be
it what?
They would be sinning? I'm just trying to get the backstory. Like,
they would be breaking it. They would be breaking the next command that Moshe gives in 23. It says, this is what Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is a rest, a Shabbat Kodesh to Yahuwah. That which you bake, bake, and that which you cook, cook, and lay up for yourselves all that is left over to keep it until morning. Maybe it'll make more sense if we keep reading, because there's something else in there.
Can I just read real quick 22 to 24 real quick, just again for myself, because it's a lot of information. All right, 22. On the 6th day. Matter of fact, let's go back a little bit. Verse 20. I'm going to read a different translation for my sake. If there's something you really hate, just stop me and we'll talk about it. All right. Verse 20. But they did not listen to Moses. Some kept part of it until morning, and it was full of worms and began to stink, and Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it each morning. That's when they gathered it.
Gathered what?
Whatever this food is, this manna. Okay. This is what they were gathering in the morning. It doesn't say they were gathering it in the night. So they gathered it each morning, each person according to what he could eat. And when the sun got hot, so like the middle of the day where the sun is probably the hottest, it would melt. And so that means that after that point, it might be hard to gather, because now you got a whole bunch of melting manna. Okay, so that's not going to be easy to gather. So you have the first half of the daytime to gather stuff before it starts to really disappear. Verse 22, and on the 6th day, they gathered twice as much food, 2 omers per person, and all the leaders of the community came and told Moses and said to them, this is what Yahuwah has said, tomorrow is a time of cessation, whatever that word is, from work. So rest from work, a holy Sabbath to Yahuwah. Whatever you want to bake, bake today. Whatever you want to boil, boil today. Whatever is left, put aside for yourselves to be kept until morning. I have a question about this verse. Is the manna being boiled?
Well, I would say no. Typically, you would boil chicken or meat. Like, that's what you boil.
All right. That's what I was thinking too. If the whole point of this manna is melting away because it's too hot, why would you want to throw it in some burnt boiling water? I mean, once you get rid of the,
And you bake bread. Bread is baked.
Yes. So that's that.
They have flocks and stuff, so it doesn't have to be good.
This is what Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is a time of rest from work, a holy Sabbath to Yahuwah. Whatever you want to bake, bake today. Whatever you want to boil, boil today. Whatever is left, put aside for yourselves to be kept until the morning. So they put aside until the morning, just as Moses had commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Moses said, eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to Yahuwah. Today you will not find it in the area. I think this is where you're getting the Sabbath being during the daytime, from morning to morning.
I still don't see it. But okay, so going back to 16, it's talking about the manna is what's going to be gathered daily. It doesn't mention the quail. So in verse 4, it says, Then said Yahuwah to Moshe, Behold, I will rain bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. He's making it clear the bread will be coming out at a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether or not they walk in my Torah. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Right? Because he was just talking about just the manna. Only the bread so far. And then they go into the different thing. At evening you shall know Yahuwah. He's going to, in the morning, wait, hold on. Moshe is in the evening.
I think it's verse 12.
In verse 12, it says evenings. Between the evenings, you are to eat meat. And it says evenings as in plural, not singular. So I think it would be more than one evening.
This one just says.
Which verse is that, Melissa?
Verse 12, it says, I have heard the grumblings of the children of Israel speak to them, saying, Between the evenings you are to eat meat, and in the morning you are to be satisfied with bread, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim.
Yeah, what is that, King James?
No, this is Hallelujah Scriptures.
Okay. Yeah, the between the evenings is a term that's used for people that believe like us that days are from evening to evening. So between the evenings, that would be one evening is starting the day, and then the other evening is ending the day and starting a new day. So evening to evening. So between the evenings would be the 24-hour period. Mm-hmm. The night and the daytime. So I'm stuck on verse 22. I'm trying to analyze verse 22 to 25 because that's really what it's getting down to this. 22 is on the 6th day. So they're on the 6th day. It's not a Shabbat yet. They gather twice as much bread, which we know they gather in the mornings. Mm-hmm. So they gathered on the 6th day in the morning. So that would assume, if we're taking our stance, the day already started in the evening prior to that morning. Mm-hmm. For us. Yeah. So they're in halfway through the day by the morning. Okay, that's halfway through the day. They gather what they want. All right. Twice as much, 2 omers for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came unto Moses. He said to them, This is that which Yahuwah has spoken. Tomorrow, so that means tomorrow still didn't come. It doesn't really tell us when Moses is saying this, at what part in the day he's saying this, but we do know that on the 6th day they gathered, twice as much. That's what we do know. And he said to them, This is that which Yahuwah has spoken. Tomorrow is a solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to Yahuwah. Bake that which you want to bake, and boil that which you want to boil, and all that remains over, lay up for yourselves to be kept until the morning. All right, so tomorrow is a solemn rest. Bake that which you want to bake. Here's what I'm seeing, or here's what I'm not seeing. He's not saying, just hear me out for a minute, I'm thinking out loud. He's not saying bake what you want today in the evening, like tonight. He's not saying bake what you want tonight. He's not calling the time where you bake and eat tonight. He's just saying bake what you want today. So that could mean, for our sake, for our argument, it could mean while you have the rest of the daylight hours left, you can bake whatever you want and cook whatever you want. You have all the way until the sun goes down to do whatever you want, okay? So far, I wouldn't see any contradiction so far with that idea. All that remains over, lay up for yourselves to be kept until the morning. So the morning would include, it would be the seventh day, because we'd have to go through the nighttime, which for me would be the beginning of the seventh day. That nighttime period is the first half of the day, and then the morning is the second half of the seventh day. So it would still be morning of the Sabbath. Verse 24, they laid it up until the morning as Moses ordered, and it didn't become foul, and there was no worms in it. Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to Yahuwah. Today you shall not find it in the field. So here's what I think is happening. So people are asserting that because he says today during the morning time, perhaps that's where the Sabbath day is. But the Sabbath started, the Sabbath, we would believe that the Sabbath already started in the evening. It's just the test of Exodus chapter 16 wasn't to see whether or not the food would go foul during the nighttime. That wasn't part of the test. So it's not part of the equation. The part of the test is to see if it could go foul in the morning. You know what I mean?
And when it says today you do not find it in the field, the pattern is what they find in the field is the quails and the bread. So that's where it kind of gets confusing for me, because it doesn't really state that they're gathering anything in the evening. That would be an assumption. When it comes to the quails on the sixth day, the only thing that's spoken about is the bread. And then on the next day, they still went out. Some of them went out and they didn't find any. But there's two things that they're gathering in the field, the quail and the bread.
What was that last thing you said? Quail and bread? What was the last thing you said?
There's two things that they're gathering in the field, the quail and the bread.
Right.
But the sixth day is where it gets murky for me.
How about this idea? Is it possible that the word bread could also just mean food? Because that's one of the definitions of that word.
That's true. Yes, especially if we look at Yahusha, he's the bread of life, and the word is our bread, and we feast on his flesh. And so, yes, I'm in agreement with that.
Let's go to 26. I'm going to switch back to the web, which is more like the Hallelujah and ISR. All right, 26. It says, 6 days you shall gather it. All right. Oh, I'll do 25. Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Shabbat to Yahuwah. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day is the Shabbat. In it there shall be none. On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather, and they found none. Yahuwah said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Do we have to read any more? Because Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the sixth day the bread of 2 days. Everyone stay in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. The house of Israel called its name Manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and its taste was like wafers with honey. So Moses said, this is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded. Let an omer, which omer is just a measurement. That could be that. I could take a measurement of anything: meat, grain, powder. You know.
But that one's only the manna, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's bread, if it's just food, I could take measurements of food in general.
But in context, we all agree that this is all talking about manna that they're measuring.
Yeah, that was the bread. That was the bread that they were measuring, the omer.
It's always, yeah.
Okay. It says, let an omer full of it be kept throughout your generations, that they may see the bread which I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna in it and lay it up before Yahuwah to be kept throughout your generations. As Yahuwah commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. So the children of Israel ate the manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is 1/10 of the ephah. That's 22 liters, or 2/3 of a bushel. So they did that every day in the wilderness, except for the Shabbats.
Okay, this is where I gathered that didn't equal every day. Can I read that?
Well, can we come to a conclusion about the Shabbat thing yet, or there's no conclusion? For me, I don't see the day starting in the evening being in conflict with Exodus 16. I don't see Exodus 16 forcing the idea that the Sabbath day is only during the daytime. I think it's an assertion with the idea already that that's what it is being put into the text.
And this scripture is this scripture, when I did my study originally, this is what brought me to, keeping Shabbat from the evening of the 6th day until the evening of the 7th day, which is why I posed this question, because of the quails not being mentioned and only bread being mentioned, which is what I think Milo is bringing out. Mm-hmm. That's what got me to the evening, because it doesn't talk about them gathering in the evening on the 6th day, any quails. It talks about it up until that point. The only thing from the 6th day on that's spoken about is the bread. But the other argument, or the other perspective that was brought out, is this day, the 6th day, being the time that you gather. That's why the bread is the only thing that's mentioned, is because he's only talking about the day.
Well, he says on the 6th day in the morning. It's very specific here. It doesn't mention day just as that. It doesn't say that a morning is equated to a day. It's just letting you know. It's being specific to what time period of the day you're going to be doing the gathering, and it says in the morning. And it melts halfway through the daytime.
Right. So then, I guess it's just an assertion from that point, that day, because they're gathering in the morning, that when he's speaking about day, the 6th day, and then the 7th day, that the Shabbat will have to begin, that in the daytime, because that's when they gathered the manna in the morning. So then the Shabbat would be that following day. That's the alternative argument. One focusing on the day, and then the other one, which is what I got when I was originally reading this, before that even came into play, that perspective came into play. It seems like it's very clear that it begins in the evening. They're not really gathering. It's not mentioned that they're gathering quails in the evening, which would, to me, signify that rest, that they are not gathering in the evening. And then when it says in verse 27, and it came to be that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none, that they would have, like they have been doing every day, going out to gather in the morning, that some of them went out in the morning to gather. So without even asserting anything, it does appear that it would be the same pattern that's in Genesis, from evening and then morning, that the day starts, in the evening. But I wanted, to get your thoughts on that perspective. But I see now that one argument is focused on the day. The other one is just what the text clearly says here, talking about the gathering in the evening, and then manna twice as much in the morning. There's no mention of gathering anything the evening of the 6th day.
Right. So don't disregard the evening as being part of a day just because there was no test or there was no instruction for what to do in the evening for that day. So we don't want to disregard as if the evening is not part of the equation. So yeah, that's what I observed from this chapter. Milo, you want to get something on? Go ahead.
Okay. So now we have the question of the quail being, was the quail there every day? Did they eat quail every evening? And was manna provided every morning? So I have a few questions. I'm going to try to lay out those questions. In chapter 16, Shemot, would we agree that this is the first time that they are seeing manna? And then it's going to, like, from now on.
I have no idea. I'm going to take a guess and say yes.
Okay. All right. So if they were eating quail every day and manna after this point, let's just pretend it was after this point, there should never be another point where they're murmuring about eating flesh, right? Because they would already have flesh to eat. Would we agree with that? Okay, so let me go backwards for a second. Okay. Verse 2 of 16 says, the whole assembly of children of Israel murmured against Moshe and Aharon. Mm-hmm. And the children of Israel said to them, would to Elohim we had died by the hand of Yahuwah and Mitzrayim when we sat by the flesh pots, when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger. So do we agree that they're complaining about not eating meat as well as bread?
Yes.
Okay. So would we say that if they were to have quail, be provided with quail every day and bread every day, they shouldn't be murmuring that they're missing meat?
Right.
Okay. I'm going to go to Numbers 11. I like to start at verse 1 just because I just like to start at verse 1. Okay. So it says, and when the people complained, it displeased Yahuwah, and Yahuwah heard, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of Yahuwah burnt among them and consumed them in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moshe, and when Moshe prayed unto Yahuwah, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Tav Erah, because the fire of Yahuwah burnt among them. And the mixed multitude
that's a nice name. Taberah.
And the mixed multitude that was among them fell.
What's your name? Taberah.
Verse 4. The mixed multitude that fell among, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? So, right now, if we were just to stop, it might sound as though we're at the same point in Exodus 16, right? It might sound like it's a duplicate story, so we don't know yet the time frame.
Right.
Verse 5 says, we remember the fish which we did eat in Mitzrayim freely, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There's nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. So this is why I believe that the quail was a one-time thing, because if it was constantly provided, they wouldn't be complaining about meat. They're saying all that there is this manna that you're providing us. And the manna was a coriander seed, and the color thereof bdellium. The people went about, gathered it, ground it in mills. They beat it in mortar, baked it in pans, made cakes of it, and the taste of it was like the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. And we know that in the morning they will gather it. Now I'm going to keep going because they are going to be provided with meat, but this is a different circumstance. Then Moshe heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of Yahuwah was kindled greatly. Moshe was also displeased. And Moshe said unto Yahuwah, wherefore have you afflicted your servant, and wherefore have I not found favor in your sight, that you have laid the burden of all these people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that you should say unto me, carry them in your bosom, as a nursing father bears the suckling child, unto the land which you swore unto their fathers? When should I have flesh to give unto the people? Again, because this is the cry of the people. So I would say again, they don't have the quail every day because this is their cry. Where shall I give these people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I'm not able to bear all these people alone because it's too heavy. And if you deal with me, kill me, I pray you out of hand, if I have found favor in your sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, gather me 70 elders. I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit. Verse 17, I will come down and talk to you. I'll put my ruach, which is upon you, upon them. They shall bear the burden with you. Verse 18, saying to people, sanctify yourselves. You shall eat meat. You shall eat flesh. For you have wept in the ears of Yahuwah, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Mitzrayim. Therefore Yahuwah will give you flesh, and you shall eat. And you shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome to you because.
So that's more than a day.
Yes, but my point is
that's more than a day.
But this was after they had manna already. This was after they already had manna. They said.
Okay, but the Exodus 16, it was before the manna.
Exactly my point. So if they were being provided with quail every day, every day, man and quail was always what they had. They would never again murmur for flesh. But we see they're saying there's only manna here.
Why couldn't it happen? Why couldn't it happen for that week?
What?
For that week of the test in Exodus 16.
Nevertheless, I'm going
6
back
days, rest on the 7th.
Yeah, but I'm going back to Ezzy's point as to this question of gathering quail at the evening. They didn't always have quail together. That's why it's out of the equation. When you read Exodus 16, quail was mentioned once. You're going to see it this evening. I'm going to give it to you because they were murmuring. But the rest of the chapter, the gathering was all about, other than the baking, it was always gathering the manna, how much you're supposed to gather, an omer for a person. That's not referring to quail, it's not referring to me, it's referring to how much of this manna are you supposed to gather. Then you're supposed to gather twice as much. If not, you won't have. So I don't believe that the quail was there forever, that they always had it, because they would never murmur again. And for me,
that's a good point. I'll accept that. And
for me, this point is they're saying, all we have is manna. All we have is manna. Where's the flesh? Where's the flesh? And then he gives them to. He brings quail again. He does. He brings quail back into the picture, but this time it's not so pretty.
Verse 31 and 32, they do take measurement to the quail, by the way, omers.
They do?
Yes.
Really?
Verse 31, a wind from Yahuwah went out and brought quails from the sea and let them fall by the camp about a day's journey, and on this side, and a day's journey on the other side around the camp, and about 2 cubits above the surface of the earth. The people rose up all that day and all of that night and all the next day and gathered the quails. So here's at least 2 days worth. He who gathered least gathered 10 omers. And spread them all out for themselves around the camp. So like I was saying, the omer vocabulary is just a measurement. That's what I was trying to say. I'm saying it's just bread. Yeah, I think there's verses in 16 that you can definitely see it's equated to because there's a specific measurement you were supposed to get. But I'm just saying, like,
I think I understand both of your perspectives, and I think, Brother D, you just kind of what you just asked. What if it was just for that week for the test? That kind of makes sense. But then what Milo just read, I mean, if you read the last part of 16, it does put the time period of what you just read in Numbers, because in verse 35, it says, and the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land, and they ate manna until they came to the borderland of Canaan. And then you've got in Numbers where they're tired of it and they're like, where is the meat? So I could see how perhaps it is just a test during this, because it sets the time period. It says it's the 15th day of the 2nd month. So maybe it's just during that week, and then moving forward, all they're eating is the manna, which is why on the 6th day, the quails aren't mentioned, because that to me kind of puts it in more perspective, because that's what I was always asking, like, why aren't the quails mentioned? Is it because they're not gathering in the evening because it starts in the evening, or were there just no quails provided? And some people take that and then say, oh, this is why you should, do it evening to evening, or, just completely focus on the day. So that puts a lot into perspective. So I don't know. I'm assuming, it should be from evening to evening, especially with what we just read in Genesis. Like that, I'm seeing that in a whole nother light from where I was seeing it before. Because in the back of my mind, darkness is evil. We're not doers of light, blah, 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 all of that. But, yeah, you're giving me a lot to think about.
All right, we'll end there. That was good. That was fantastic. Exodus 16, Numbers 11, I think we hit.
Yeah.
The question was, when should we observe Shabbat? Should we observe Shabbat from evening to evening, or from morning to morning?
Or just morning to evening.
Or just morning to evening. So I hope that this video was able to help clarify what the scriptures has to say. And if you haven't, watch our Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 to, I think, 15? I didn't type it down yet. 3 to 14 to 3 to 15, where it talks about the days. All right, shalom.